came from a great house with mother and father. And when I got to Minnesota, my father beat the hope out of us. Just completely took the hope out of us. Living in a place with rats and roaches, we throw poverty around like it's some rag or something that got in the way. But poverty destroys. And the roof in a child's life is his father. The father protects him, keeps that area of protection over him. You understand? See, my father took the roof off of my life when I was 7 years old. And when he took the roof off of my life, all the ugliness of the world crept in.
I ain't right out here for a job.
What you wasting my time for?
I came out here to tell you, don't ever hit mama again.
Excuse me?
You heard me. You touch her again and I'll kill you.
Pimps, and whores, drug dealers. He beat my mother every night. So he became the boogeyman. The boogeyman is really real.
I'd already lost one child by being absent in his life. I was away in prison, and another man who didn't even know my son, a 3-year-old son, beat my son to death. And then 12 years later, I'm in a similar situation where a group of assassins, I call them assassins, some gangbangers, ambushed my son and shot him. And he was on his deathbed, and it just brought my whole life in front of me. And I just basically just threw myself to the mercy of God and said if he lived, that I would change my life. Poverty came and got me and my 5 little brothers and did unimaginable things with us. And I grew into something that you wouldn't like. I'm not proud of what I grew into. I'm not proud of what I grew my family into. But God had a plan. In my family, there are 30 men in jail for some degree of murder, 10 for first-degree murder. I didn't count the people that were in jail for other things like child molestation or things of that nature, or assaults or things. They were smaller caliber. I mean, not meaning that they're not bad things. I just started counting murder. And it amazed me. I didn't even think even in my family. And I know each and every one of them, and there was one thing that each and every one of them had in common. The roof was broken.
Someone once said, it's hard to clean the floor of a house that has no roof. Well, one day, a man took the time to show me how to build a roof over my head.
There's children out there that just need a little bit. They need a hope dealer to come along in their life. And together, guess what? We can fix. To restore peace, there has to be a change in the culture of America itself. You know, one of the things that we've worked real hard, and I say we as Americans, we've worked real hard to take Jesus out of the life of people by taking prayer out of churches and things of that nature. I believe that was wrong. In my community, one of the things we desperately need is the grace of God. That's what we need, and we need a belief system that relies upon that. And also, we have to get back to being family. Yeah, when Martin Luther King was marching, what was his biggest influence was the families that were marching behind him. Right now, the breakdown of the family has cost America a tremendous force of change. So the culture of America has to change. We have to get back to being family. I wanted to play that because the subject matter I'm going to talk about, I don't like talking about. You know, it's sort of, I've been around a lot of things, but it's the worst thing I've ever been around. I've seen people shot in front of me. I've been indicted for murder. I've been, gang banging, for 20 years, crack addicted, all that. But the worst thing I ever seen or was ever a part of was the sex trade. I remember telling a young lady who had accidentally gotten pregnant, and she was one of my girls, that I don't care if you have to kill the baby and sell the blood. A pimp's got to live. And that's what I meant. I didn't care what she had to do to get rid of that baby, because the baby was in the way, would have been in the way. Unfortunately, she got an abortion, okay, because of that one statement. And I became known for saying stuff like that, because in order to be a pimp, you have to have no conscience. You cannot have a conscience and be a pimp. And you don't love anybody that you send out to be a prostitute. My first entry into sex trafficking was as a victim. A young kid that I knew, we were very hungry, rats and roaches running around, and no food over the weekend, especially in the summer if there were no school. And me and my 5 little brothers, they're crying, they're looking to me to feed them. And a friend of mine came over to my house one day with a White Castle hamburger. A kid I knew down the block. He was poor too. Where did you get that? Come with me. Well, I went with him, and he took me to an older man's house who raped me and gave me a White Castle hamburger. And then told me if I wanted 8 more, because they were 12 cents a piece, he would give me $1 if I came back. And I came back. Not because I wanted to, because I had to go home to a mother that was beaten and 5 little bitty brothers that were starving, because we couldn't go outside. My father refused to let us go outside. There was no money in the house. There was no food, nothing. So I would sneak out and go see this pedophile, and then I'd go to White Castle. So you got to think, every Saturday, my little brothers are looking for those hamburgers. They want those hamburgers. I didn't even eat mine, So that was my first introduction to it. So I'm growing up, and I got into the life of crime, and finally became a thief, an armed robber, and soon to be a gangbanger. Every juvenile institution in the state of Minnesota. Then I went finally to St. Cloud Penitentiary. And I decided in St. Cloud Penitentiary that you could make a lot of money selling people in here. Inmates actually have money. We had jobs, we had family and friends, and the one thing that we needed was sex, okay? So we infiltrated a nonprofit organization. I will say the name of it because it's a true story. I don't know if they're still in existence, but it's called Women Helping Offenders. And we sent into that organization pimps and madams, whatever you want to call a female procurer of women and stuff, to bring girls into the penitentiary as young as 16, because that's the age the prison wouldn't let anybody under 16 in. The prison thinks that they're coming in to pray for us and do all kinds of stuff. We even had the guard that was told to watch us would get one of the girls. And we start selling girls that way to inmates. And the lady, one of the ladies that was involved with it, she was much older than me, sort of liked me. I was 18 years old, she liked me. She was a little too old for me, so she made a deal. If I would be with her one time, she would give me her daughter, who was 17. Well, it's about the same age, so when I got out, she gave me her daughter, who she had already turned out to prostitution. So I had a ready-made prostitute. I didn't even know what I was doing. In prison, I knew, you bring people in, you have sex with them and stuff. I didn't consider that I was a pimp. I was a sex trafficker, okay? So now I've got a girl that her mother gave to me.
And she brought a friend of hers with her. Because, see, at the time, in my culture, there were movies and stuff out about pimping. It was fashionable to be a pimp. The Minnesota pipeline was going, where we were sending girls to New York. White girls were a special commodity because you could make more money with white girls. So white girls from Minnesota were a special commodity, especially in places like New York. So procuring them, one of the ways, and in pimping, I call it the arm of pimping. And that's acquisition, acquiring the girl, retention, keeping her, and maximizing the profits. The lifespan of a prostitute with the pimp is probably 6 to 9 months in most cases, because they run off or escape, or another pimp, gets involved with them or whatever. So you have to maximize that 9 months. And every once in a while, you get a woman called a bottom lady that would stay with you and be in love with you and think she's going to be married to you, but you'd be thinking in the back of your mind, I'm not marrying this. But she thinks you're going to marry her. See, a lot of people think that, a lot of pimps were knuckle-dragging, just idiots and stuff. Calculated psychopaths that were psychologists and psychiatrists without training, knowing human behavior. So acquiring a woman was it was sort of hard in some cases, and if you were in the right area and knew what you're looking for, that became easy, okay? Now you acquired the woman, now you got to introduce her to the lifestyle. So there were many tricks that we would use. You'd hire a really nice guy, a really nice looking guy, friend of yours or something, to have a really pleasurable sexual experience with her and give her $100 that she would bring to you. That was for the really little 15, 16-year-old naive little girl, And if she was dating a black man, you would first introduce yourself to her family so that they would get disgusted with her. That was a ploy. We loved a racist family. Oh, she's got a black boyfriend. We don't want nothing to do with you. Perfect. Thank you. Thank you. You just gave me your daughter. We don't want nothing to do with you. Why are you dating this guy? He doesn't have a job. He's black. So the separation of a young girl from her father especially the father, you have to disgust him. So if I met the father, I'd talk, urban language and stuff, and talk all crazy and look all crazy and grin and laugh all silly and just evil, and the father would be disgusted with me and tell his daughter, get away from me, never come in this house again, and thank you, Daddy, because now I've become her father. I needed separation from the family. And we never tried acquiring a young girl from church. Don't do that one. That's too hard because you're working against a conscience. You're working against a family of people. Them church girls, too hard. If you want to spend your time doing that, you have to basically kidnap them and beat them into slavery. But regular girls walking the street that have no purpose, that have no family, perfect victim. Alienated from the family, perfect victim. Okay? We look for certain things like tattoos, piercings and all that kind of stuff. That meant this girl had a free mind. Okay? And willing. This is what it looked like to a pimp. So now you got them. Now retention. First thing you have to do with a young girl is to teach her that she's a female dog. And there's a name for it. It starts with a B. I'm in church, so. But actually teach her and actually get her to call herself that. You'd be shocked at the language that prostitutes will use with each other. They don't call each other ladies or anything like that. They call each other the B word and the H word, okay? The H is hoe.
H-O, okay. It's a short for another word. I'm having trouble in church saying some words, so. But that's what these women would do, okay? And the best partner you can have is another girl in the trade, because she will keep that other girl in the family. So at my height, I maybe had 5 girls living with me. And each day they would go out, each day, especially on Sundays. Sundays is a great day. Why? Because the Vice Squad didn't work that hard on Sundays. Their hours were shortened, okay, on Sundays. Fridays and Saturday nights, you had to be really careful. But Vice on Sunday was sort of relaxed, especially during church service. Okay, so this is not a group of just idiots running around, you know, that are doing this to these women. This is a group of men that we had a fraternity. We knew each other. Okay, we schooled each other. One of the biggest pimps in Minnesota, if I say his last name, I'll say his last name. His name was Booker Arredondo. Okay, biggest pimp in Minnesota. That's the pimp that I learned under. We called him Clark Kent because he didn't look like a pimp. Okay, he didn't wear flashy clothes or anything, and he only dealt with white girls. Okay, because they made the most money. He only dealt with white girls because they had more expensive tricks, okay? And tricks were men that bought women. I mean, some of the girls in the stable actually had people that owned car dealerships, people that owned farms, you know? And the girls would work the tricks into buying cars and giving them cars and property and all kinds of stuff. And the girl was psychologically just hoodwinked into believing that she's a female dog. So Booker, I also got some help from a book called Pimp, The Story of My Life by Iceberg Slim. That's the Pimp's Bible. That book is still being sold today. That is the Pimp's Bible. That is where most urban pimps learn the real psychology of pimping. And it was in a book. You can buy it in Barnes & Noble right now today. Pimp, The Story of My Life. So that was my lifestyle. And I have seen, when I say I had to have no conscience, I've seen things that I wouldn't even describe in this church, that I had women do for my specialty tricks. Because retention of your customer is important too. And I didn't let my girls date black tricks, only white males. Why? Because they had more money. Why? Because they had more to lose. So we ran 3 shifts of girls, especially for Honeywell men. Honeywell is a big factory, big company, located right in the heart of our community. They had 3 shifts. And those men, okay, first off, they were not dangerous because they were at work and they would get off work just for 10, 15 minutes to be with a girl and go back to work, so you didn't have to worry about them kidnapping one of your girls or taking them, okay? Second, 10 minutes of business where you get the money quick and in a hurry. And third, sometimes if you got a picture of them, you could blackmail them. So we had to have 3 shifts of women just for Honeywell men. And the Alexander porn industry was right on Lake Street there. So we got 3, 4 dirty bookstores and 2 movie theaters and stuff that's bringing in customers, white males from the suburbs. You'd starve to death trying to pimp if you only had customers from your little poor neighborhood. You would starve to death. A pimp couldn't make a living. You got to reach out into Woodbury and Edina, okay? That's the heart of the pimp trade. And to be a pimp, you've got to be dastardly. You've got to be a person that would actually kill someone because you've got angry people, relatives coming at you. You've got to be ready to hurt someone. But more importantly, you can't have a heart. There's no such thing as a pimp with a heart. There's no such thing as a pedophile. Pimps, pedophiles, sex traffickers, they're all the same thing. Let's not separate them. Okay, we'll make that mistake. Okay, well, he was just a pimp, he was a pedophile. No, they are the same making. They are the same beast. They just have different specialties. And we glorified it, and it became okay. There was a movie called The Mac, and a character in it named Goldie, who psychologically mystified his women. Psychologically talked young girls into crawling around on the floor with dogs and thought it was okay. This is like I said, this is the worst thing that I've ever done in my life. And I've got 10 felonies. I've been in prison 3 times. But this is the worst thing that I've ever done in my life. And I'm not proud of it. So the arm, acquisition, finding them, pimps, we stay up all night and all day. We ain't have no time clock, okay? So you see a kid walking down the street at 4 o'clock in the morning, crying, perfect, okay? You see a kid skipping school, perfect. You see a kid out past so-called curfew, perfect, okay? You see a kid that openly will talk to a stranger, perfect. You see a child that's angry or crying, perfect. Or you can read body language. You see a kid that's afraid. See, some of these kids are just afraid. Young girl just sitting minding her own business and stuff. She's on a bus stop. You pull up in a car. Hey, come here. What? Come here. Get in the car. Oh, okay. It might seem like, could it be that simple? Yes, it's that simple. Especially if they don't have a home to go to. What I mean by a home, I'm not talking about a place where people go and they have a roof and everything. I'm talking about with a mother and a father that actually pays attention to this child, that knows that you can't pull up in front of their house in a big old Cadillac and their 16-year-old daughter runs out and gets in a Cadillac, okay, of a stranger. So families are very important, or lack of family. I'm going to say families that act like a family are very important in the trade, very important. Only one of the girls that I had in my career died, okay? And there's a myth about pimps that they protect prostitutes. You cannot protect a girl that gets into a stranger's car and goes someplace unknown. That's a myth. That's part of the psychology of pimping. What you're protecting her from is other pimps. So other pimps can't just come take her because then they got to deal with you. Okay? You're not protecting her from her family because all her family has to do. A good family will run a pimp out of business. A good family will break a pimp's back, basically, and I'm not talking about physically. And one of the great things that was used for good that pimps, we relished in, when the movement started to de-victim, to take prostitutes and look at them different. Oh, let's not hold them in jail as long. Okay, they are victims, which they are. But sometimes laws that were meant to help, you saved pimps so much money by just letting the girls out. That was, this is a gift. You save them so much money sometimes by just letting them out, but not giving them any services, see. You just let them out of jail, they're out on the street. What do you get? What is a lady that stops prostituting? What is she? She's an unemployed prostitute, okay? And what that means is you're not going to hire her because she has a sex offense on her record. You're not going to hire her because she hasn't worked before. You're not going to hire her because she didn't graduate from school. She's got to come back home. She's got to come back to the open door. She's got to come back to me because I'm going to put her to work. I'm going to make sure she has something to eat, okay? While everybody else is turning their nose down and up at her, her family is looking at her like she's a piece of scab.
I'm telling her she's beautiful. I'm telling her I love her. I'm telling her I need her. Meaning none of it. None of it. Who could love someone that you would make lie down with a snake? Who could love someone that you would send out to be used by other men around the clock? And pimps encourage each other to really put their foot down and keep their prostitutes working. If you did not, you were considered soft in the business. And other men would come after your prostitutes because prostitutes believed if you didn't work hard, if you didn't make them work hard, you were a soft pimp, and that was a disgrace. That's how these women were decimated and feeling like female dogs. They were feeling like if they didn't make a certain amount of money, they were of no value to daddy. Yes, I said daddy. Common language. Common language. It basically takes their father, puts him out of the picture, and makes you the highest male figure in their life. You are not their man. You are their daddy. You will do anything for daddy. And get a girl with a daddy complex. She will do more for you to disgrace her father. She will make more money for you than you could ever imagine. Them were gold mines. Fathers turn out more prostitutes than anybody else. A father is supposed to teach a girl how to stay away from pimps by teaching her what a man is. Fathers are the biggest advocates for pimps than anything else. So as I was going through life, I had pimp heroes. One of them is still alive today. His name is Don Juan. He's one of Snoop Dogg's friends. Now, I'm talking language that you might not even know, but if you look up Snoop Dogg, and there's a guy, and now, they call him Bishop Don Juan. Yeah, he's a pastor now, but he's not really a pastor. He just took pimping to such a high degree that he's a bishop. He wears a cross. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. There's a lot of retired pimps that are in the priesthood or become pastors. A lot of retired pimps. Now, of course, I retired pimp, I'm a pastor, okay, so. But it's a field where people can be exploited. The church that's the biggest pimp arena imaginable, because you can't go to jail for it. You can lie, make people believe that. I am a Christian guy, and I do not belong to a church, nor am part of a church that does this. But in my community, the church is the next pulpit for some pimps because they have no conscience. See, you got to have no conscience. You got to remember, no conscience. So with no conscience, you can crawl into any space. So Don Juan, you can look him up on YouTube right now. He's got celebrity status. He walks around with a gold cup and has diamond rings. He's a folk hero in Chicago. They love him. He's like, Don Juan could walk into a place and visit with sports stars and all kinds of stuff because he took pimping. And he's got a PhD in pimping, meaning that his own mother just loves him and thinks he's the greatest guy in the world, and he's probably pimped 2,000 or 3,000 women. So the culture that we live in America, we have a problem. It's not just the street guy. And I'm going to tell you one thing that in pimping is racial. Because black pimps can only do certain things. But boy, if I was a white pimp, I could go and open up a brothel in Las Vegas. Okay? Yes, I could go, but black pimps can't do that. They don't allow us in there, okay? No, we black pimps can't own brothels in Las Vegas. Only white pimps can do that, okay? And guess what? That's one of the highest places that we go every day people from all over the world come to Las Vegas. And that's one of their greatest money makers. Why? Because you're dealing with a commodity that people will pay thousands and thousands of dollars for. And a lot of people think that those women that are working in those brothels are doing it because they want to. No. Even though as a pimp I could not own a brothel, I could send my women there. Yes, I could send my women there and let the white pimp, I'd have to pay the white pimp to manage them and give him his cut and the government. But the girl that's working in the brothel is the same girl that's working on the street. She just makes more and has a longer lifespan. That's it. And as Americans, we look at her a little differently. And I'll say something just a little political right now. There's a young lady that's been exploited all of her life called Stormy Daniels. I know her type, you know. She's sort of a high-paid pornography woman. And pornography is a great field for if you can get a girl into that. That's a great field. They make so much money in it. And there's no limit to how many times you can sell her over and over again because she's in pornography. And once she becomes a star, she demands more money, okay? And 99% of the time, there's somebody behind her that's encouraging her to stay in that business. So we get a young lady, and now she's in the news, Stormy Daniels. And if she wouldn't have supposedly been with Mr. Trump, we would be looking at her differently, okay? And now she's still doing her sex business, but now we're paying a lot of attention to it, and a lot more money is going to it, and we're making a cultural cult icon for young girls to be Stormy Daniels. Certain things are so subtle that we don't pay attention to it. But there's young girls that's looking at this now and saying, oh, she slept with a president. No, she's a sex victim. She's been trafficked in her life. She's bought into the fact that her body is no longer sacred and that many and multiple men can just use her like a dog, okay? And she looks at it as a business. So in my last 5 minutes, I just want to say maximizing a woman's, a pimping is a business, okay? Don't confuse it with anything else. It's a dark, black, ugly, stinkhole business. It's designed to make money, not to do anything else. There's no redeeming qualities in it, okay? That's the business of pimping. And pimps have no conscience. There's no such thing as a good pimp, nice pimp. A pimp is the worst thing that could ever enter into the life of your child. And as a pimp, I have 2 daughters. And everybody knew my daughters, and everybody knew this about them. Not them. Everybody that knew me knew, even their boyfriends knew not them. You don't hit them. They're different. They're not like these other girls. They have value. These other girls don't. Okay? So that was a disgusting part of my life. I'd like to leave you, with a couple of thoughts. America has, especially in the poor communities, has allowed pimping to be on center stage. When you have disgusting movies that highlight pimping, like The Mac and Superfly, and you highlight individuals that have benefited from pimping and they can talk about it out in the open, that's a tragedy. And so the poor mother or father that's trying to get their daughter off the streets, sometimes we're not doing her any good because we're silent. And we don't realize that we have to talk about it. We have to stop suburban men from coming into inner cities. We can starve the sex trade out. But it's both sides. It's both sides. I don't know who's worse, the pimp or the person that buys the girl. I don't know who's worse, the pimp or the person that creates the web page that sells the girls. All I know is they all have to go. And the only way to get rid of all of it is through Jesus. That's the only way. And he is the great redeemer and stuff. So in my life, he redeemed me. I am not that person anymore. I feel, like I said, if you were not a Christian person that asked me to do this talk, I wouldn't have did it. Because like the stench of it gets on me. And I know the harm that it's caused so many people and stuff. Like the young lady said, the small is the new big, I think she phrased it. Yeah, pimps are born every day. The last case I'll talk about is the Evans brothers. The Evans brothers were my friends. If you look their name up, they went to jail and they got 50, 60 years. A couple of them, one of them I know at least has died. They were a pimp family. It was a culture to them. Okay? They would have girls in bikinis cutting their lawn over in North Minneapolis. And they were folk heroes in my community. That's how sickening, that's how ingrained, that's how nasty pimping was, that we allowed it in my community and looked at them guys as heroes. That's the work of the devil. Thank you.